welcome to all of the mamas watching us. We have a very special panel in store for you. So I want to just kick this off with some clarity on language, because I really think that language is super important as we talk about normalizing cannabis for mothers. So within this conversation, if you hear the word cannabis used, that is speaking in reference to all THC and hemp, all cannabinoids. And if you hear THC specifically, weed, pot, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, that's the THC dominant stuff. And of course, if we're saying hemp or CBD, we're speaking specifically to the lower THC ratios of under 0.3%. So I just want to clarify that. So to kick this off, I want to do a quick round of introductions so that everyone can meet these wonderful mommies that I have on stage. So let's start this out and let's just say what we do, our role in the industry, how many kids we have, and also sort of how you use cannabis and how CBD works into that. So I will start off. I'm Bianca, High Society Mama, and I will be your moderator. I have the goal of normalizing cannabis for moms, helping people to feel more comfortable in their cannabis use every day. And you can find me on all social medias as High Society Mama. I also am plant touching. So we have a seed to smoke CBD hemp farm in Southwest Michigan. I have a 5.5-year-old son, and I use cannabis every day in some form, but a lot of days I am very CBD dominant. If I do use THC, I really love to roll joints with a good mixture of CBD and THC, because for me, THC alone can be a little bit anxiety inducing. So I like to use them together. But to start my day, throughout the day, I really enjoy CBD because I'm just able to stay focused and grounded in my work and lifestyle. So let's go around. I'll say, introduce Jennifer Skog.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Skog with MJ Lifestyle. We are a magazine and community of women empowering other women and educating about cannabis and CBD, hemp, and THC. I am very happy to be here. I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old that just went crazy into baseball season. So I've been coaching and I'm a little crazy. But I'm happy to be here, and sports season is amazing as a mom. What was my other thing I had to talk about?
How you use cannabis day to day.
I use cannabis daily, mostly THC. I have been a consumer my entire life, adult life, and I kept it hidden for a very long time. So actually coming out of that green closet 4 years ago has been kind of just a whirlwind of how many things have been made possible just by being open about it. So I'm super grateful. I do use CBD as well. I love topicals. My kids will I will also give them CBD from time to time if there's just something bothering them that, sometimes it's like the placebo effect, they're like, oh, well, let's try some CBD. So I definitely love enjoying tinctures. I love Moon Mother's products very, very much. Happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
All right. And Whitney.
Hey everyone, I'm Whitney Beatty. I'm the Hi Mommy Life on Instagram. I serve as CEO of Apothecarry Brands. We do sleek and sexy storage and humidity solutions for cannabis connoisseurs. So beautiful cases that lock up that you can keep your cannabis in. I'm also CEO of Josephine and Billy's. We are slated to be the first dispensary focused on women of color, and we open in Los Angeles in fall, September 1st. Woo. I'm also vice president of Supernova Women. We are a 501c3 that seeks to encourage women of color to become stakeholders in the cannabis space. And we do that through education, advocacy, and networking. I have a 7-year-old named Langston who runs my life, 7 going on 70. And I use cannabis in a number of ways. I actually didn't grow up using cannabis, so I didn't get into cannabis until a doctor suggested it for my anxiety. And so I kind of break it up into 2 different buckets. So the cannabis I use for my anxiety tends to be more CBD heavy. So I'm talking about 18-to-1 ratios, something I can put in my coffee in the morning. I might take something that has a ratioed gummy throughout the day because generally I'm working and I don't want to have that euphoric high. But once it gets later at night and the kid's gone to bed, I also enjoy smoking a joint. And I also try to do ratios there as well because I do have anxiety, and too much THC can cause anxiety with me. So nice 1-to-1, a pure beauty or something that I can mix together tends to put me in the best position. So I always out there encouraging women to try new things within the cannabis space because we can always find some stuff that will work.
Awesome. Jessica.
Hi, mamas. I'm Jessica, founder and formulator from Moon Mother Hemp Company. I am also plant touching. We grow all of our own hemp here in Colorado, produce all of our own products. I've been the formulator. I'm a certified clinical herbalist and have been using cannabis in my herbalist practice for many, many years. I also have been using cannabis for most of my life. I joke about how cannabis was my first job, but it's not really a joke. You know, a lot of us have been in the industry for a really long time, long before it was an industry. And we also have a greenhouse. We grow all of our own personal cannabis as well, organic. And I have 2 little ones. We were celebrating my daughter Clover, my 5-year-old now, her birthday yesterday. So we're coming down from like birthday cake and all of the excitement of birthday parties. My parents are here as well, which is its own thing. And and it's been awesome and fun. And yeah, so I'm really similar, Bianca. I am really CBD heavy. I mean, I know we produce CBD products, we produce hemp products and CBD products, and I use CBD throughout the day. I typically, unless it's like, unless I'm having a hard day with my kids during homeschool on our Fridays or something like that, or a weekend that's really stressful, I typically will be doing mostly CBD throughout the day. But if I have a day where I'm just like, you know what, I just need to drop in. I just need to be totally present and play and make fairy houses and paint and do this, and I'm having trouble just being present, sometimes I will take like a gummy or something like that during the day and just kind of use THC to drop in. But the majority of my daytime use is CBD, and then I'll use THC after bed to kind of really wind down, hang with my husband, just tune in, pull some card, do a little card reading, do a little bit of meditating, just kind of chill out on my own. But typically CBD during the day, THC at night, unless it's like I'm with my girls. Sometimes we'll do like a trip to the hot springs or something and have fun all weekend. But that's a little bit more rare than I would like it to be.
Feel that.
Right, absolutely.
So I really believe that we all, not we as in the 4 of us, but we all as in all mothers that use cannabis, play a role in normalizing cannabis use. And because moms are held to this extra standard within society, I am just preaching this far and wide that when we normalize cannabis use for moms, when we get to a point that it is fully acceptable for any kind of mom to openly say that they use cannabis without judgment, once we get to that point, that's when cannabis use is really normalized for all of society. So the sooner we work to normalize cannabis for moms, the further we're pushing cannabis for all of society. So there's a bit of a learning curve to get people to try cannabis. So have any of you guys gotten a friend to come over to the side of cannabis and like start using it? How did that process look? Like, how have you introduced it to friends?
When I came out of the green closet, I actually introduced it to my parents, and I introduced it as conscious consumption. So instead of smoking weed, you're consuming with a conscious mind. And that, I think, is kind of a really good way to kind of change the narrative of what the plant is about. But she's been my biggest whatever celebration, I guess, of converting to the other side, to the green side. She actually now, because she has nothing else to do, goes and checks out the local dispensaries to see how they're going to treat her and to see what they have. So there's been like, and it started with a little blueberry gummy. Like, we're in California, so we have Kiva, which are these amazing little chocolate gummies, or chocolate blueberries, and they would just take one at night to sleep, and it gave them so much better rest and sleep. So when you're older, you have a lot of pain, you have a lot of that stuff, and getting their minds changed was really, really a big challenge.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely going to piggyback on that because I was the same way with my mother, and my mother had a well, let's start with this. Communities of color have been disproportionately disenfranchised by the war on drugs for years. And so you've got these older generation of people who are like, cannabis, oh God, because we've seen such bad things happen around it. And I think it's a real detriment to older women of color because they're missing out on this benefit of plant magic, because it's almost like a PTSD. If you've seen your neighbor's door get kicked in, you've seen what happens when people get dragged to prison. They're just like, no. And for my mother and for millions of of them, they had no distinction between, cannabis, meth, heroin, all drugs, all bad, going to do the same thing. So it was really the process of, it was two parts. It was having that conversation. Why do you feel this way? Well, it was by design. Let's go back to Harry Anslinger and look at why this is, this demonization happened, and how it was connected to people of color by and being able to kind of explain those feelings that they had. And then the other part of it, I think, I tell people that if this was the end of prohibition, we'd have to have real conversations with people. Like, do we drink a gallon of tequila or do we drink a shot of tequila? And those are the same kind of conversations I had to have with my mom, and also some of my who we haven't used cannabis since college. We have to have conversation. When you're eating an edible, maybe don't eat the 100 milligram edible and then be surprised that your legs don't work because you ate 100 milligrams. That's on you. I didn't do that to you. Try 5 milligrams, try 2.5. Let's try microdosing up until we find where your limit is. Let's talk about, and it's just being able to have these really simplistic conversations with them. And also like, well, I like indicas or I like sativas. Well, that really doesn't matter as much anymore. Can we talk about terpene profiles? Can we talk about, because a lot of people are looking at only like this THC number, the percentage of THC. And I saw a really good article recently that was like, we're only consuming based on THC. That's like drinking moonshine all the time. We don't just drink Everclear all day because we want to get the drunkest as we possibly can. That's not a thing. It's the same thing as making decisions just based on THC. So it was really just sitting these people around a table. I opened my apothecary case, took everything out, and was like, let's just look at packages and talk about how we consume these. And it just made them so much more comfortable in having that conversation, because it wasn't uptight at a dispensary and they felt like someone wanted to buy them something. It was just sharing information.
I have not actually introduced any of my Canna Moms to cannabis, but I have been working really closely with them to destigmatize either cannabis use in breastfeeding or cannabis use in parenthood, cannabis use during the day. It's been just working with them to be comfortable saying, hey, I use cannabis, and I'm comfortable saying that in my community or on my social media or wherever it is that they need to say it, especially for those of us moms here in legal states. Some moms are still afraid to say, hey, I use cannabis, and it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very across the country, what kind of political climate that they're in. The three of you are all in very long-term cannabis use areas. And so I really like the exposure that I get working nationwide with moms, that I hear all these stories about what's happening. And so it's wonderful to have that, also that perspective in the back of my mind, so that I really am constantly thinking about, how we bring more moms in, not just in California, where it's California sober and it's like, the hip thing for a long time. And same with Colorado. I'm in the Midwest, and, we're in a much newer state of mind around cannabis. And so I think that CBD is really a important step in that process, as a starting point, to bring moms in to experience the benefits of the plant without the fear of getting too high. Like, I know that I have a number of friends who are like, remember that one time that we smoked weed in college and we got so high and we didn't know where we were, and, we couldn't feel our legs or whatever it was, and we thought we were all going to die? Yeah, we're not doing that again. And they're like, just say no, never approaching cannabis again. Right. And I mean, I definitely know that weed hangover of overdoing the edibles. Like, we all have that story. But for a lot of people, when they have that story, they never come back to cannabis again. And so getting them to take those stepping stones, which is where I think CBD is so important. And for me, when I started experiencing smoking CBD and actually felt some effects from it, then that really, helped to make me break out of that thought process of like, oh my God, I'm going to get too high, or, help others to get out of that thought process. So sorry, I was like distracted by everything. You guys and your faces are classic. So, education is a really important part of overcoming the stigma of cannabis. We have the whole DARE program that has been so ingrained in our mind. So what educational elements do you think are most important? Like, what share with someone that's new to cannabis, or that you are trying to get to explore cannabis more? What do you think is most important?
So I'll go first. At Moon Mother Hemp Company, we focus a ton on education. It's just one of these supplements that needs a ton of education. It's one of these herbal remedies that really needs a lot of hand-holding because of the amount of stigma attached to it, and because of all of the misinformation and miseducation on purpose that's been done about this plant. And so we start at the basics: the endocannabinoid system, the body, the way the plant interacts with us, the way that we are literally built as humans to consume cannabinoids. And we start with the basics. And we also, I do a lot of really intentional speaking about the plant, where we liken it to the tomato plant, where I talk specifically about the different type, like high CBD strains or high THC strains, and liken that to sauce tomatoes versus slicing tomatoes, that kind of thing, where it really starts to break down those walls and those barriers, where I just start saying like, okay, isolate is like vitamin C. Full spectrum is like eating an orange. And then when they start hearing these natural things where I'm comparing it to plants that they consume regularly, and it really starts to break down those walls for them. And they really start to understand that this is just a plant, and all of the misinformation that's out there about cannabis and hemp and them being two different plants. And I'm like, no, honey, it's the same plant, just different genetics. They're being bred for different profiles, the same way that we breed different tomatoes for different features. Like one has higher water content, one has higher fiber content, and these plants are working directly with our bodies. So what I've seen is the more we start to normalize this plant, and the more we start educating people, the more open they become to THC as well. So we really start to introduce the CBD factor first, but then when people start to really learn about the endocannabinoid system and learn the way our receptor sites are they're just waiting there to interact with some cannabinoids to come along, either endocannabinoids or phytocannabinoids, people really start to become receptive to consuming THC as well. And I found that just normalizing it, just calmly explaining exactly how our bodies work, that's it really opens people's minds, and all kinds of people, to THC as well, when all they came for was the CBD. But once they start to learn about how it works with the body, they are far more open to consuming THC than they were before they walked in. They weren't even open to having CBD, but they heard that they needed it. So they walked in the door, and then they walk out thinking, well, I might even try some THC as well. And that's always a huge win for us, because we know our endocannabinoid system is waiting for THC, for CBD, for all of the cannabinoids. It's there waiting for us, and it's a companion plant for our bodies.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
I was going to say, I love that, because one of the things that has been driving me crazy is there's almost like a demonization of the THC against the CBD. Everyone's like, oh, CBD is great, but THC is still naughty. So being able to do a better explanation of how these things work together. And I always like to talk to people about this entourage effect, about these things going hand in hand and having the best effects for your body if you use them together. And so, to your point on education, I do it through those conversations, but also I try my best to share what I'm doing, because I want people to be able to see me as a mom, me as somebody who they know in business, and all these other aspects. And me as someone who consumes cannabis. I was telling somebody the other day that it makes me a little itchy sometimes when people are like, well, CannaMoms, CannaMoms. And I'm like, well, we don't call moms who use insulin moms, or who, this is, it's just a part of my motherhood. It makes me a better mother. It makes me a better person. It allows me to do the things that I need to do. And so in normalizing it and to try to educate, I just try to be as forthright as possible about the way has affected my own personal journey, and hope that people are at least able to then open their hearts to listen to why I believe that way and go from there.
Yeah, for me, it's everything that you women are saying, and it's a lot of introducing it to a friend, a former mom. I'm almost like, I think it's like I go straight towards the balms. Like if somebody has a pain, because that's almost like the exact moment that they're like, oh my gosh, this works, and it's like, that's kind of like, here you go. And then kind of like, obviously continue to teach them and then start them with super low doses, So a lot of times it's like, okay, well, what is your problem? Like, obviously I'm not a doctor, but so much of for us is it's women to women knowledge. It's, we're not going to read it from a website. Most of us are not going to read stuff from a website unless we're specifically searching for something. But if you don't know what to search for, you're not going to search for it. So for me, it's just, talking as much about it, but also not being like, CBD is good for this, CBD is, because, I don't want to also be that friend who's like pushing CBD. But, I'm definitely have, so many people that just know that I'm the weed mom or whatever I am, and they're like, I have a question. So, you know, it's always a whisper. I have a little question for you. And it's like, I think I need some CBD. Okay. Like, but yeah, so I think it's just the conversation has to constantly be happening. The other thing about also, like I said, the conversation is we are so limited on the information we're allowed to share on the web. Like you can't even have the word cannabis on your website anywhere if you want to have payment processors, which by the way, Jess, you do. Did you know that? I can't believe you do. We'll have to talk later. But so that makes it really concerning because it's like you've got these payment processors and stuff dictating, and you're like, there's a major difference between THC and hemp. One is intoxicating, one is not, you know? So it's like, and it's hard to even educate in writing because we're just being monitored nonstop. So it's another reason why we have to be as vocal as we can.
Definitely. I think from an like educational standpoint, one thing to like bring back into our minds when people are starting out using cannabis is cannabis in general is the amount of THC that's in THC these days. Because if you used cannabis or used THC back in like the 90s and that was like your experimental time, and now you go to try it, you can have a very surprising experience just from having like a couple puffs of, where you're like, oh yeah, I used to always, smoke a joint here and there or do a bong rip or whatever you did in college, and it's not the same now because you might just get destroyed. And so it's like bringing that back into people's minds that like, we have to start out slow. We have to like play with those ratios, and it's not going to happen right away. It takes some practice. And that's where also, again, CBD is very helpful because it's this great stepping stone. It's this level, like you can use it with THC. You can get ones that have very high CBD ratios, and all of that helps to like have people have this great cannabis experience instead of just getting completely shook because you didn't expect it. So, but on to our next topic. How important do you think like imagery, how we talk about cannabis, how we show cannabis is to the normalization? And I want to talk to Whitney first about this because she is talking about sexy stuff. And whenever anyone describes something as sexy, I'm on board.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you asked because I do. I always describe our cases as sleek and sexy. But one of the things that drive me crazy, and I came to the cannabis space from the entertainment industry. I worked in entertainment for 16 years. I have a master's in film production, and I used to be an SVP over at Warner Brothers. So I'm deeply, into that media space. And one of the things that drove me crazy is the lack of women of us depicted as cannabis consumers, because you get a lot of teenage boys who are bad behind the gym or unproductive college kids, and if you're a woman who are smoking, you don't have a lot of clothes on and you're generally rolling a joint off of someone else's ass, and that's not generally what I'm spending my time doing. It's just not who I am. I'm not hating on anyone who's rolling joints off of other people's butts, but I think what is important in order for people, I always say, how do I get the 45-year-old white soccer mom in Kansas? And in order for that to happen, we need to be able to see ourselves in the same way as how do I get, the older Black woman? They need to be able to see themselves in a real light, in a real way, consuming cannabis, and doing so in a mindful manner. We don't, you see frat parties and people are downing beers all the time, but that doesn't tell people how to consume beer any more than seeing people who are just completely stoned off their ass is going to tell people how to consume cannabis. So I think, for me, when it comes to imagery, I want to see women who are like me, who wish they worked out 5 times a week, but we work out 2 times a week, and we're busy, and we have kids, and the kids want to eat 3 meals a day, and we're just trying to keep our shit together. So, can we just get real for a second? Can we see more of that? And I think that really those are the women who I draw myself to on the internet. I'm like, oh, that's my kind of mom. That's the mom that I want to have a play date with or whatever. And as companies, I'm the CEO of 2 companies. I make sure that my companies are putting that imagery out there because I want, those women to be able to feel like they've got a home and a place with us, and that we're going to, help them, bridge this journey if they choose to do so.
Yeah, that is basically exactly why I started MJ Lifestyle. As a photographer, I desperately needed to change. I really didn't even think about doing it, but the minute I realized how underrepresented the everyday woman, and from every nationality, I mean, so many, was when I was like, okay, we need to change this. And honestly, some of my stuff, because it was in the beginning, started out very boudoir-esque, and I had a problem with it because I was like, I don't want to over-sexualize cannabis. It's been sexualized way too long. But it was like, those were the only women willing to pose with a joint at the time. It's like, okay, let me be a little sexy. And I'm like, okay, no more sexy. So it's definitely, I think imagery is one of the biggest things that women need to see, even just like by taking a tincture, so that people can see how you're using it, and get ideas for what it is, so I absolutely think that, yes, imagery is very, very important.
So too, and I think also not just imagery, but also packaging. So for Moon Mother, we wanted to make sure that the packaging really represented who we were as a company and the Moon Mother name. We're normalizing cannabis for mothers right now. I'm like, you know what? We're using the Moon Mother name, and we're presenting packaging that really normalizes this as a quality product that can be in your home, that can be used by your family members and all family members. And that was extremely important to us. And the same thing with our social media, and just speaking to our Moon Mother community in general, is making sure that we're speaking to our older clients, as well as the mothers, as well as the family members, and making sure, and Jen, you took some amazing pictures at my home of my children using Dream Balm on their feet. And so we're making sure that we're normalizing these products for the entire family. And I think packaging, photography, the way we're talking about cannabis, the way we are represented, the way we show up, and the way our packaging looks on the shelf at the store and in someone's home really confirms that this is a product that is meant to be here. This doesn't have, bright green cannabis leaves and green crosses all over it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what the majority of us are shopping for. And that's not what the majority of us are, that's not what we like, let's be real. That's not what we like, and that's not what we want to see. We want to see beautiful packaging that holds really clean products that are safe and beneficial to us. And so I think it's really important. Packaging, the entire vision of a company and the entire vision of how we're holding our space as women in the cannabis industry, I think is really important.
One last thing I just kind of thought of also is, this is not a men versus women thing, but as far as I'm concerned, as a photographer, as an artist, women should be representing women. Men have been shooting for the fashion industry, and they've been making these body standards of their own. They have been telling you what's sexy. And so I really just think, like, even if you're a brand, like, think about that, like, have a woman telling the story of your brand, because that's the voice you want. That's who you're connecting with. The men do not know any, like, I have men fighting me about why MJ Lifestyle is just for women. And I'm like, it's not against men. It's just, we have vaginas. We're very different. We are completely different, and we need each other. So, yeah, I think it's, like, also important to know, it's the women. We need to constantly be supporting ourselves and speaking for ourselves.
I agree 100%. And not only that, but we want to make sure that we are working with women vendors because we want to uplift other women. We want to make sure that women have a foothold in whatever market it is that we're representing, whether it be the cannabis market, the photography market, graphic design. My company only works with women designers, women photographers, and women PR. It's just what we do. We want to make sure that where we spend our money is uplifting women all across the board. And I think that's really important. It's important to us.
I love that as a value. And I also think with mothers, the way that each and every one of us, each and every mom in here, every mom that's listening to this, how we speak about our cannabis use is so important. I really love hearing the words conscious cannabis use. And we can be moms and we can know how to dose ourselves properly so that we are responsible cannabis users. And we don't need to even use the word, I'm going to go get so stoned, or it's not a competition on how much we can use. It's about using it for us because we need it, and showing other mothers that you can use cannabis too in an intentional way that serves you. I'm not going to tell you the right way for you to use it. I will tell you how it empowers me. And so when we use that kind of language around our cannabis use, we teach others that they can use it in the same way. And so, and Whitney, what you said about how the media or movies portray people who use cannabis, I can't wait until we see another Carrie Bradshaw or someone who is this successful female boss who just uses cannabis a little bit. Because just because we use cannabis doesn't mean we use it 24/7 all the time. People just automatically assume that I walk into anywhere and that I am, I'm not always using cannabis. I do use it a lot, but it's not something that we don't assume that you're, wasted all hours of the day just because you say you like Chardonnay.
Exactly. That's what drives me crazy. But it's fine for the wine moms and it's fine for all these other people. But us, the cannabis moms, we're the naughty people on the block, and it just drives me bonkers. It is total gaslighting. It's gaslighting.
It really is.
In the highest degree.
Yeah. And so we have so much work to do. And I just hope that everyone that's listening knows that you have the power to help normalize cannabis in your language, in your actions, in the way you portray or speak about cannabis to your best friend, to the soccer mom, to your neighbor, to the other moms on the PTA. I mean, we started all of this conversation at the ground level, and whatever you're comfortable with, whatever level you're comfortable sharing, that's how we start to spread this plant. So I think that's so important that everyone knows that they have a role.
Just a funny little tidbit, when I had started coming out and I had met my kid's principal, and we're California, so just public school. And turns out her husband owns part of one of our new dispensaries. And so I'm literally going through the drive-through lane and she's like, "You should have seen the lines at 420 yesterday." And it was just the funniest thing because you're like, your principal is talking about the 420 celebrations. So, I mean, it is really just opening up those conversations, and you really never know what to expect. It's like, oh, you had also mentioned the Midwest. The Midwest is a whole other, thing. So yeah, that's the hardest that's going to be the hardest nut to crack, I think, for sure. So as much talking as we can get would be amazing.
Absolutely. The Midwest, and Bianca knows I'm from, she actually lives just about 20-30 minutes from where my family is from. And so it is pretty intense there. But what I mentioned earlier about even the mamas in legal states like us, even the mamas, there are still many, many, many mamas in the green closet, big time. Even in legal states, I talk to mamas and they're like, well, I'm just not sure. I don't really talk about that with anybody other than like just my little group of mamas, who know about it and who consume, and they're not out at all. And so, like I said before, just making them feel as comfortable as possible talking about it is the step. Just talking to each other and talking openly and outwardly about our use as cannabis moms, or mothers who use cannabis. To your point, Whitney, is I think just extremely important. Just keep talking and keep sharing the information and keep sharing the joy.
Yeah. And I mean, one of my favorite things about working in the cannabis industry is that opportunity when someone says, oh, what do you do? And I get to say, I grow hemp. I have a hemp farm and I'm working to normalize cannabis for moms. And then they're like, what? And they're like, oh, I use cannabis too. Shh. And I'm like, you're good. Your secret's safe with me. But it's amazing how many people feel comfortable after you disclose that, or they're like happy to share. They're like, oh, I just got a new CBD. I love it. And you're like, yeah, that's great. Yes. It's like all of that's baby steps and all of that is making progress. So we just have to keep pushing this conversation forward. And I think we're doing so much to normalize it in each one of these conversations and each one of the conversations that you have with any of your acquaintances or friends. So we are at the end of our time. So I want everyone to have a opportunity to make it over to the main stage. But before I do that, does anyone else have any last words, anything they want to squeeze in? Other than big thank yous?
Just big thank yous. Thanks for bringing us on. It's always awesome to be in conversation with you, Bianca. Jen, it's good to see you. Whitney, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. I definitely would encourage people to be that person that violence. And again, you're absolutely right, Bianca. As soon as one person starts talking, it starts, all the mouths start going. And so sometimes you just need one person to say, hey, I'm a cannabis consumer. So if you can do that in social circles, you'd be surprised at what a difference that makes.
And that's when you disclose that and it opens the door to that conversation, even if they've had a bad experience with cannabis, that's your opportunity to reel them back in and explain to them why they had that bad experience, or how they could improve their experience so that maybe they don't continue to spread that message, whatever, that experience was for them.
Which is so funny because people can have a bad experience on vodka or tequila all the time, but the next weekend they're right out there trying again. But if you have a bad experience in cannabis, it's like people are like, ee. So yeah, it is. We do so much better when we discuss the way in which we're using and learning from each other, because we don't see nearly enough education out there, and they don't. To Jennifer's point, they don't allow us to talk enough about it. There's so many FDA, warnings and lawyer warnings, and my attorney's like, you can't say none of this. So yes, please have those conversations. Talk with much of your group, get your people together, and have a mama smoke session. You'd be surprised at how many people's lives can change because of it.
Yes. And CBD is our friend for that process of bringing people back into cannabis. the more that we can like be like, yeah, you might have had a bad experience because you were using straight THC. Let's try that CBD again. Or let's try and use CBD with your THC and just give it another whirl. So the opportunity is there. So Jennifer, thank you. Thank you for all of your beautiful photos. It's such a like great approach to normalization, is just getting that regular imagery out there that people can relate to. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day. Yes, our day.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Yes. So, and I look forward to hopefully joining you all again soon. So happy Mother's Day. See you all soon.